to go ahead and hit record, we want to make sure that all of these are up in our new website. So if anybody wants to go back and watch one of our lunch and learns, feel free to go back to that website, check it out, see all the things that we have for you there. And that's where we'll keep the recordings. And I really wanted to spend some time with you today because Alyson and I have been busily working on the budget. As all of us know, it was just budget season. We were putting our budgets together. We were looking at all the things that we needed to include or not include in our budgets, as the case may be. Now, for those of you who know anything about academic libraries, most of you will know that a flat budget means a budget cut for all of us in library land because of the inflationary costs of working with our vendors. And so I wanted to explain to you a little bit about where we're going with the library, where we're putting our priorities, how we're spending our money, and then I'm going to turn it over to Alyson, who's done a phenomenal job of putting some of these together in a slide deck so that you can have some understandings of how we're making these decisions and the impact that's going to have on you, your teaching, your students, your research, all the things. So for those of you who don't know, when I came on board about 3 years ago, I started looking around the library and I noticed that we really did not have a collection that reflected the curriculum. It was old. The reference collection was abysmal at best. A lot of it had content in it that was so dated. And when you are primarily working with a reference collection for a health and wellness college, it can be detrimental to have a reference collection that's old or content that's old in your collection. So that's one of the first things I noticed is the datedness of the collection. The next thing I noticed was the size of it. I mean, you'd think that I would notice the size of it first, but a lot of our content is electronic in this day and age. So I wasn't quite too sure what we had in that arena. But I did see that it wasn't circulating. And then the next thing I noticed was the fact that we had a lot of fiction books, a lot of popular books. And I thought, why are we spending money on popular fiction that is not attached to our curriculum when we've got the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh straight down the street, and we really have access to that content anytime we want. So I started looking at this, and I talked to my colleagues, and I talked to the staff, and I talked to faculty, and I started thinking it might be better for us to consider becoming a virtual library, giving back some of the space to the university to do other things as our needs are evolving, and think about how do we grow this collection responsibly and effectively for the needs of Carlow. So we started looking at where to spend the money, and obviously we had a number of graduate programs coming up in the College of Health and Wellness, and so we looked at that as our basis. So, okay, if we're looking at those, where do we need to spend our dollars and cents for that? And then we started looking at all of the other programs that we had to see where it was reflected, where the spending was reflected. When you have content that you're looking at, you know, the health and wellness versus the humanities, health and wellness content is always going to be more expensive, right? It just is. So what could we do to make sure that everything was covered and we were giving people what we needed? And so Alyson and I started looking at use stats of the collection to see what we could ostensibly pull off of the shelves and start making room. And we had a systematic method of doing this. And it was initially everything that hadn't moved in 10 years or more. And that was most of the collection. And so we made some connections with Better World Books, which is a mission-driven not-for-profit, to extract these books. And what they do with them is they will recycle if it's not needed. They will resell to serve not-for-profit organizations, or they'll serve third world countries and evolve that are creating library collections. So it felt very mission driven to Carlow. And then we started looking at where we could bring in content, because we did not want to eliminate access to anything. If it was coming off of our shelves, we wanted to make sure that there was a digital version of it someplace that was accessible, that anybody could get to. And so the first thing we did was we connected to the Internet Archive, which increased our volumes by over 1 million collections. So you had over 1 million new titles that were available electronically. And then we started looking at where we could invest some of the dollars and cents in our new programs, and we brought in Access Medicine. And then this year we looked at where could we expand on our humanities, and we spent $30,000 of our book collection on the humanities. Now those titles are in perpetuity. The difference between buying for the humanities and buying for health and wellness, there's very little that we will buy for health and wellness. Most of that content we will be leasing, because it's outdated so quickly. And so I wanted to tap down rumors that we are not buying books. We are buying books. They just aren't physical books. They're digital books. And I wanted to tap down any rumors that we were not managing the collection, because we are. Now, if you need a physical book, by all means, we can get that for you. If you need to hold a book, because I know I do, if you need to hold a book in your hands to feel like you are reading something and absorbing the information, we can get that for you via interlibrary loan. And I am also starting to build out a partnership with the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh that will allow us to directly borrow from them. That hasn't been solidified yet, but it's something we're working on. But we do have interlibrary loan, and it isn't just for articles, it is for books as well. So if you need it, we will get it. So I just want to make sure everybody is clear on that. As we repurpose this space, people have already eyed up the space. They're already talking about ideas and opportunities. We want to let you know that no decisions have been made. We may not be in all of those conversations, but we are trying to hang on tightly to the limited space that we have for the archives. And so if you've been up here, you know that we've moved the archives from the dingy basement of St. Agnes, and we brought them up here. And although we do not have the time and staff at this point to really do much with the archives, they are here and they are being rehoused, and at least they are in a place where we have a controlled temperature and it's not mildewing and moldering in some basement. With that, I also want to say that one of the other things that we're doing right now is building out our virtual services. We are literally down to myself, Alyson, and Richard as part of the library staff. That doesn't include Caroline, Luke, and David, who are also part of the CTRL as a whole, who do the instructional design. Alyson is managing all of the collections, access, and delivery. Richard is handling all of the instruction. So, and we are sharing out reference. So we're asking folks to really help us out by embracing a digital virtual service for reference and support, because that is the best way that we're going to be able to serve the needs as we're dealing with incredibly small staff for the purposes of the campus. That said, Richard and Caroline, David and Luke have built out incredible resources for instruction, for information literacy. And we're going to continue to do that, hopefully with Jose and Tessa as part of our team. These are the skills that we hope to bring to all of our first year students, but certainly as we think about disciplinary approaches, we want to build in those skill sets too. Again, those are things that we can build directly into the LMS. The other thing that I want to bring up whenever I think about, we are small but mighty. We are doing less with more. As you think about all of the things that we are purchasing, all the databases that we have access to, all of the information sources, there are ways to integrate these directly into Brightspace so that your student, today's student, this is their library, right? This is the device that they're using is their library. And so the more we can make information available to them at point of need, the better off it's going to be. So we can help you curate collections, content for your classes. We can help you integrate it into your instructional design process, and we can help you build it into Brightspace. All you have to do is make an appointment with us. So I wanted to just really give you kind of an overview of the vision of where we're going with the library. While our physical footprint may not be very big, our virtual one is growing. One of the other services that we are building, and it's going to be so important as Alyson gets into what we are cutting and the problems that we are having in terms of, every library faces. When I tell you about cuts, these are real. But we do have a service called Get It Now. And so for everything that we are cutting, there is a reason we are making those decisions based on our finances, but we are making sure that there is access to the content that you need, and you can get it in less than 24 hours. So just a couple takeaways before I turn it over to Alyson. Just make sure we may be growing smaller in physical, but we are growing bigger and stronger in digital. If you need it, we will get it. And we are building out instructional materials and tools that will help you and your students be successful. And so when I said to you that there are cuts, and there are, a flat budget for us means about a 5 to 7% decrease. And that's because of the inflationary costs in general. So I'm going to turn it over to Alyson to talk to you guys about what that looks like and what we are letting go of, the decision making that we made in terms of making those decisions, how it's going to impact you, and where we're going to go from here. So go ahead, Alyson. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexis. I am going to kind of start with the end of the slide deck that I had put together because it touches on the Better World books.
Oh, good. Okay.
And the deaccessioning a little bit. So I just want to pick up with that.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and share that. And of course, I hate how Teams just like collapses into the corner. So can you guys see that?
Yes, we can see it.
So this isn't really anything more than what you had already said, Alexis. Just, phase one of what we deaccessioned or weeded is anything that has never circulated. Phase two is looking at anything that hasn't circulated in the last 10 years and only the items that we have access to digitally. With one caveat being that if there are out-of-date medical texts or, the popular fiction collections that don't serve our academic curriculum, those we did, weed out. Oh, hang on one second. That is not working the way I want it to. There we go. Another thing that we are taking into consideration, and as Alexis said, is the age of our collection. So just looking at this little graph, you can see that the majority of the print books that we have were published in the 60s, 90s, and 2000s, just kind of spanning that range there. So really, if we're thinking about particularly, the health sciences, those are dangerous to have on the shelf unless they are foundational, that it can be, not the best information that we want our students accessing. we know there are caveats there as well in that, literature texts don't change. So we're keeping that in mind as well. And the other thing that I wanted to point out are the circulation statistics for the print collection. And when I say circulation statistics, that means the items that students and faculty are checking out of the library. And when you're looking at this total number, blue being the total number of circulations, and then orange being the number of circulated unique titles. Keep in mind that right now our collection is 29,000 titles. So of those 29,000 titles, only 2,800 are circulating and leaving this building. These numbers that we're looking at, that total of 3,470 is a number that another library does in 1 year or less. I mean, that could be 1 semester. This is over the course of, fiscal year 2019 to now. So, our physical books do not move. And this was just further, supporting the decisions that we're making. And just a further breakdown, if anyone's curious, this is just information on the patron category. So green would be our students. Light blue is our employees. This dark blue for me is particularly interesting because that is the interlibrary loan titles that we are lending to other libraries. So that's a pretty decent chunk of our circulation statistics are for books that our students aren't taking out. Those are being sent elsewhere. So I just thought that would be interesting to show people. And I think that's, with Better World Books, I just wanted to add to a caveat, there is to follow up. So far, we have sent about 4,300 books to Better World, and of those, 3,466 have been recycled. So that, to me, that just speaks to our mission. Rather than these books going into a landfill, they are being recycled. And there's a little bit of information here. They break it down into, what the green stats are, which I think is a nice touch. So any questions on that before I delve into the numbers and financials? No? Okay. Well, let me just, I just closed out of the whole thing. That's not what I wanted to do. Hang on.
Well, while you're pulling that back up, I was just struck by the fact that there are the number of things that were recycled and not even repurposed was outstanding. I mean, that goes to tell you our books are old and they're so old that even the not-for-profits can't use them, or that they're being recycled, not resold or reused.
Yeah. Okay. And, this is pretty informal of a little presentation that I've put together. So bear with me. I just wanted to be able to have something to share. So I wanted to start with just looking at the past 3 fiscal years and looking at the 2025 projection, just to kind of really show and demonstrate what Alexis is saying, or even that I say when I say like that a flat budget is a down budget. So looking here, you can see that the majority of our total numbers are down here, but this green right here, this subscription services spend, that is everything from our databases to the library system, journal subscriptions, ebook packages. That is the majority of what we spend every year. So I just want to put that in context because this starts at 300,000. This purple block is one-time services, so that's book purchases, implementation fees, things like the website consultation that we just had last year to redo the library website. Blue is other spend, which is supplies, printing, mailing, etc. And then the dark green is remaining allocated library funds. So just to kind of put this in context, you will see a jump here that I will explain in fiscal year 23, and then a 5% budget cut in 24. So starting with fiscal year 22, and just to kind of set a baseline, you can see what we started with is about 25 subscription packages that we had, and subscriptions to 86 individual academic journals. This list does not include, and I guess these lists that I'll show you don't include, things like the library system, and any, consortial memberships that we have, like Palsy or Lyrasis. But just to kind of give you an idea of what we had that was student facing. And kind of addressing that jump that you saw earlier from 22 to 23, a lot of those funds were moved from other budget lines to the library budget. And that was to cover things like UpToDate, the McGraw-Hill Access Medicine packages that had been previously shared across cost centers. That money was moved so that we could just pay out of one line. So just to give context to that. And then we start to look into the changes that we've made. And just to kind of underscore what Alexis was saying, when we're talking about cuts, these are decisions that we don't make lightly. These are things that we look at, the cost per use. So essentially looking at the total cost of something and if it is not feasible to sustain. So if we're looking at something that costs $4,000 that only sees 5 uses, 5 students or faculty members or staff members using that, that's not something that's sustainable for us to keep. So this year you'll see we cut academic writer in the New York Times, which I know were pretty, devastating cuts for some folks, and 2 journals. And this is something that I want to use as an example of something that I keep coming back to, and a practice that I've put into place for the library is changes that we make, like moving from Elsevier Science Direct Physical Sciences to the Life Sciences. Make sure that things like these 2 journals are not lost. We may have cut the individual journal subscription, but expanded our entire catalog, including those 2 journals, by switching. So we're strategically looking for ways that we can cut individual spend, but grow the catalog and keep that content. Other highlights for fiscal year 23 was the website redesign. And like Alexis said, the $30,000 purchase of ebook titles in the humanities. I also want to point out this Oxford Scholarship Online over in the editions that we made that year is also in support of the humanities. And then you'll just see the other editions that we made here, like the Copyright Clearance Center, SLP journals, and the McGraw-Hill Access Medicine. Fiscal year 24, we did see the 5% budget cut. And again, when we're looking at a 5% cut, but our resources having an annual increase of 7 to 8%, we have to be more creative in how we're looking at things to cut. So fiscal year 24, I mean, you guys can read this for yourself, but I just want to highlight that we added the EBSCO ebook collection that we had previously had, and I want to say was cut back in 2020 or 2019, or yeah, 2019.
Yeah, it was before I got here, so
it was before Alexis got here. So we do have that back, which expands our ebook collection. We moved from purchasing the mental measurements yearbooks and test and print physical volumes to having the online database. And we moved to having ProQuest Nursing and Allied Health Premium database, which has most of these titles like the New England Journal of Medicine, Professional Nursing, Psychosocial Nursing, Fluency Disorders. Most of these are available in this or that Elsevier package. So none of that content was lost. And then moving on to the 2025 projection, we are really having to diligently look at what we have. This is the first time that we're not budgeting for anything to be added other than book purchases. But there's still some wiggle room, so that's not set in stone. So a few things of note here, that these are the services or the journals that we're cutting. We are cutting to databases. Those are only abstracts. So there's really not content, full text content being lost. We're moving from content DM to haiku, which I'm really excited about for digital collections, including, the Scholars Day collection and the IPF, because that moves us from 20 gigabytes of storage to 1 terabyte, which is just delightful for me. And we're increasing our Get It Now budget from 2,000 to 3,000. So just a little explanation there. Are there any questions? I know I'm just kind of rapid fire going through these. Okay.
No, I think it's very clear. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, and then just, putting it side by side just to give people an idea, moving from 86 individual academic journals to 61. So you can kind of see, yes, we've expanded our databases, but the academic journals are going down. And taking into consideration those changes from year to year, I just want to show you again that we went from this to this, and this 30, this number right here, and this green chunk, we're really not adding that much to get to here, but that kind of gives you an idea of what that annual increase is over time. Yeah, just to further give context, this might be going too far into detail, and I apologize, but I've become a numbers person. Just to demonstrate that, starting, for example, this EBSCO package with Academic Search Complete, starting in fiscal year 22 at 44,000, projected fiscal year 25 is 50,000, just so to give a better idea of where we started and where we're going, so that there's more understanding of why we need to make the cuts that we're making. I think that's kind of, yeah, that was it. I know that's a lot, but
that was a lot, but it was really well done. Thank you for that, Alyson. I hope that makes it clear how we're going about the decision making, what we're trying to put into our work as we build out what this collection is and what it needs to be for the campus community. And I think the other thing that I want to stress is if you don't use it, we might have to lose it. So if there are things that you feel are critical to the well-being of an academic institution, I would strongly encourage you to use those resources frequently and tell your colleagues and your students to use them too, because the decisions we're making are based on real numbers, and we will continue to try to make good decisions, fiscally responsible decisions, as we are good stewards of the university's resources. So I wanted to turn it over to you, ask us any questions, thoughts, concerns, and we will continue to keep you informed about the decisions that we're making as well. No concerns, no thoughts? I might just be giving you a half hour of your lives back then, with my gratitude that you tuned in to find out a little bit more about what we're doing. And we will continue, like I said, to keep you informed about the decisions that we're making. Oh, good. Okay, Tim, thanks for popping in. I appreciate that. Okay, have a great week, everybody, and we will see you in the next one.